I need help, boss.
Stands up and says it louder. He goes, I have a really big penis.
We're the NSAA. We're never serious about anything except grip ball.
I have drifted an aircraft carrier.
What?
To an extent, but you'll be out there alone as fuck. There's no.
Just bumping into people by osmosis of dopeness, you know?
3, 2, 1. We're rolling.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Happy Hoodlums podcast. It's your host, Kemper Woodruff. I also got my co-host, the very powerful, incredible Zack Sampson. And today we have a very special guest, my boy, Suave, a.k.a. Brendan. And
What up?
I met him through Mi Familia. It's my cousin John Thomas's friend, who we became friends back when I was 19 or 20 now. So that was almost a decade ago, which is pretty crazy to think about. But we wanted to have him on the show because he's not only very hilarious, he's very talented, and he's got an important message with a very creative movement. And I think me being a fan of hip hop and just freestyling, it's only natural that I have someone who's intellectual and also kind of fusing that passion that he has for not only the environment, but just wordplay and bringing them together in a constructive way. So everybody, Mr. Suave.
Boom.
Howdy, everybody. Happy to be on the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the Eco Side project real quick and kind of how you got into rap, or where would you like to start?
Yeah, got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just dropped this little EP. It's called Eco Side. And like Kemp was saying, I'm just trying to merge my love of hip-hop and the environment in a unique way. And, yeah, I'm hoping people are liking it. Been rapping and freestyling since 14 at this point. And yeah, I always had a thing for music. Even before that, me and my brother playing the guitar and the drums. So yeah, it's been a long time coming, and happy to finally get this project out to the world. And yeah, thanks again for having me on the podcast, boys.
That's super dope. And I have a question because I didn't know that you played instruments like that. And when I was listening to your beats, I was like, yo, your beat selection is off the chain.
That was the first thing I noticed too.
Yeah.
I fucks with the beat.
Naturally, it made for a great cadence coming from you. So I was curious, kind of, A, do you make your own beats? And B, is it live instrumentation that's being recorded for your beats?
So I do not make my own beats. I've tried in the past to minimal success, but yeah, the writing and the rapping is really where I come in. But the beats are all made by this guy, JLB Beats. He's from Spain. Shout out JLB Beats. He's as you guys have noticed, he's definitely talented and like has an ear for like really funky and like musical stuff. So as far as if it's live instrumentation, I'm inclined to say no, but maybe he can correct that if that's wrong. But either way, yeah, he's really got a talent for this producing thing. So yeah.
Nice. How'd you get hooked up with him? Did you find him online, or what was that all about?
How did it happen? It was online, but yeah, I think it was just through Instagram. Maybe he like somehow found my page and like liked a rap I did or something, but it was like as organic as it could be over the internet, you know, like. So It was pretty cool how it happened, and we eventually got to the point where we made magic. So
that's dope.
That's super dope.
That's dope.
You know, one of the things that I was telling you is I feel that Europe is very progressive in many, many ways, and what they want to hear, even if you kind of go back to like what rock and roll was in its like early days, right? They definitely, when the Beatles came in and they started doing all their thing, it was people were ready sonically for like a different wavelength, you know? And
Yeah.
I think rap has progressed to a day and age where there's a spot for almost like everyone, but I feel that your like conscious rap is something that is not quite as appreciated a vibe because I don't think they've moved far enough beyond boom bap, you know, in the style of beat selection. And so I think it's really cool because like anybody that knows you and as the world gets to know you more in front of a camera, I'm sure that they're gonna naturally find the party animal side of you to just be fucking delightful and hilarious, you know? And you
Yeah, it's
take
in
that,
there.
yeah, and so like your presence on these beats, you know, is a great way of you expressing your mind, but doing it with like funky soul and just like a upbeat tempo that's kind of natural for people to want to vibe with or to be around. Just like when you're around a spontaneous person, you know. I think you've merged all those essences very well, and then focused on like biology almost in the planet, you know.
I
Um,
appreciate that, Brian.
yeah,
And yeah, I definitely like naturally gravitate towards like those '90s like boom bap style beats. But I think with this guy JLB Beat style, like it kind of forced me to step out the box, like how I would normally like rap and flow and all that, and yeah, it kind of made something different, but I think in a positive way. So yeah.
and so sorry, let me just silence my phone real quick. I think that is awesome. Point A, point B. I'm curious, you know, were you born and raised in New York for those that don't know? And do you think that kind of played into you wanting to kind of stick with that boom bap style?
Absolutely, yeah. So to be clear, I was raised in Rockland County, which
Yeah.
is, for those who don't know, it's like a half-hour drive from the city, 45 minutes, and can easily get there by train. But like, depending who you ask, like if you ask people from the city, I'm upstate, and that's a whole
Yeah.
debate. But yeah, we're really, it's right out, it's basically the suburbs of the city. So naturally, like a lot of that hip hop influence is going to seep over. A few of my good friends growing up, we basically, yeah, we've been doing this for a long time. And yeah, I was surrounded by a lot of people who could really rap and make beats and like just like freestyling in cars and like anywhere really. And yeah, definitely that New York influence is just seeps in, even though we're not in the city. It's like we're right freaking there. So yeah,
Yeah. And shout out to Rockland County. Anybody that doesn't know, it's a fucking
845 baby.
awesome. Yeah, it's an awesome
Yeah,
place to go. Like if you're looking to hide out and create and still be able to like dip in the city and have around yourself a little more space, but a very kind of like down home yet New York feel. You know, everyone's still got
yeah,
that
you
pace
got
of New Yorkers. You just can't fucking get it out of that state. You know, it is
it.
what it is.
Nope.
Um, but it's interesting because so much stuff, like great music and great talent, is housed right around Rockland County and like Nyack. Like for those that don't know, Bruce Springsteen fucking recorded all his shit in Rockland County. That original, like I believe it was Born in the USA or Born to Run, that album. Um, and so you know, like when I went to New York and we initially met, um, I moved back for my own reasons, but let's not get into that. Once I was there, I was working at the Nyack Library, you know, and I was very surprised to find that Nyack was like a 2 block Portland. It was just like where I came from in a different
It
fucking way.
is.
And I was like, what is it? Like, there's something in the water here. And they were like, you know, all these different famous people live right outside of Nyack. You know, there's a lot of really nice houses. And yet, right in Nyack, there's also 2 little project buildings. And it's so it's such a beautiful explanation of life, you know, the way everybody lives on top of each other, and it's kind of just a hub. So if you've never been to Rockland County, there's great food and great people, man. It's a good way to dip your toe into New York and have a way to run back out of the city pace and lifestyle, you know?
Definitely. And yeah, I've never heard Nyack compared to Portland like that, but it's just so accurate. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of all I knew because I've lived in Portland like my whole life. And I've always loved Rockland County because my grandparents lived in Orangeburg. And that's like, for those that don't know, it's like you go over the mountain and through the woods. That's the way that I describe it. Over the mountain, through the woods, you pop out the other side, boom, you're in Orangeburg from Nyack. And Nyack's right across the Tappan Zee Bridge. And it's just, New York is a very special place. And I think that everyone there wants, and it's like in your blood, that you're told to make something out of yourself. That's like the story and the iconic nature of New York. So how has that kind of affected you personally?
Yeah, I mean, I have definitely like always had that like New York hustle mentality, you know, like just like willing to work bullshit jobs to make some money. Like my friends and I would like shovel driveways, like pick up scrap metal on the road for money, like little stupid shit like that. But like, yeah, just like that, that hustle mentality is definitely a thing in New York. Yeah. So.
I guess like what I'm asking more or less is how did that play into your journey as you ventured into music, and where'd you? I know that you got your start kind of just like most people do as a way of almost like self-discovery, just telling your story, probably freestyling, just poetry in motion, learning, you know, just stumbling through it. It's like when you're a kid and you're learning how to fuck, you know, you're just pumping for all that you're worth and you don't really know what's going on. You're just going wherever
Throwing it all
direction
out there,
is natural. And then you learn that kind of finesse and who you are within this space, you know, in this atmosphere over time. And I think it's interesting because, like, with rap, you don't get to see a lot of people navigating the space and being themselves in front of everything. You know, most people want to develop this very polished style and come out, and naturally so. You know, you want to put your best foot forward, especially with a lot of critics. But for you, because you have focused so primarily on speaking in a very forward place for the planet, but you said something, you were like, I don't care if you're Democrat or Republic, you can suck it or some shit.
I did say those words,
And I was like, that's so. It's a great way of using rap in a rhyme scheme, but also having like that fucking, it's like rock attitude, like suck this fucking dick, bitch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, that's definitely part of the influence too. I mean, I grew up on all like that classic rock stuff that my parents listened to. Like went through the metal phase. So yeah, I definitely have that like punk metal like grit worked into my DNA. So that's part of it too.
Where'd the planetary love hippie stuff come from? You know, and how'd you figure out how to fit it within this craft?
So yeah, I mean, I've always been like into hiking, fishing, the outdoors, and I can attribute a lot of that to my dad. He would always take me and my brother fishing. I was basically born with a fishing pole in my hand. But yeah, hiking, fishing, camping, we were always doing that. And then when I went to college, I kind of realized like, dang, like this whole like climate issue is a real problem. And I'd already been like so deep into the hip hop thing. I was like, I think I don't know if it was like an epiphany one day or gradual, but I was like, let me merge my hip hop and the environmental thing into one. but yeah, just having a love for the outdoors and like realizing like, dang, like as you can see now with this Florida thing, like I really feel for all those people, but it's also like kind of like a warning sign, like, hey, like nobody's safe from this issue, and like we all gotta like band together and do something about it before it's too late. Not to make it a dark place, but yeah, just trying to raise
No,
awareness and all that.
that's good. It sounds like you were smoking a lot of weed before this epiphany happened, during and
Yeah, that was
after.
part of it too. That was part of it too.
And I guess touching on that, because you are in a state that was very late to like legalize anything, you know,
That's true too.
and very strict on a lot of stuff, whether it's gun control or pot or whatever,
Yeah.
um, and you know me, like even when I was younger, when I had come out, I came from working at a dispensary, you know,
That's
back
right,
there, and I was like, "What the fuck? All you guys got is Blue Dream and Diesel. Like, what the fuck is happening out here?" So
that was the
go
case.
ahead
Yeah.
and touch on that scene for me. I haven't been smoking as of late, but I'm always intrigued, and I think it goes hand in hand with hip hop.
Yeah, that it does. So yeah, interestingly enough, I was pretty much like on the goody two shoe side of things, all through high school. Like I would be driving my friends around to all these parties, and like I never touched the stuff until like I was like 20 years old. But all my friends did it to varying degrees. Plenty of them sold it when it was still pretty illegal. But yeah, it's just funny to see like all those years of like hiding in alleys and like all like being discreet, and now it's just like people are walking down the street willy nilly smoking it. Like it's crazy to see the transition. And I also did live in Denver for 2 years before moving back here recently. So like just seeing how it's like a full on economy out there is like it's just mind blowing how far it's come basically. Yeah.
Let's touch on Denver, okay? Because I my parents, I come from a hippie and a rocker, and so they're listening to like John Denver talk about Colorado, Rocky Mountain High. You know what I mean? Like, fucking, what was that shit that you experienced when you were out there, and how did it affect you when you came back to New York? Because those are two totally. It's a culture shock. They're two dramatically different environments.
That's true too. So yeah, um, for better or for worse, I moved out there like right about when COVID hit. So that
Mhm.
definitely affected my, Denver, Colorado trajectory. But yeah, I moved out there again because like those mountains drew me in basically, and all the hiking, outdoor fishing, all that stuff. And yeah, the bud obviously wasn't a bad incentive either. But yeah, it was definitely a culture shock. Like Denver's certainly a city, but compared to New York, it's like we're spoiled. So it's like kind of like a big town in
Yeah.
comparison. But it's got like a very cool, I don't know, like a very laid back vibe. Very good rock, like cool rock music scene. So I appreciate that. And I don't know if either of you have been to Red Rocks, but that's like one of the coolest places to see a concert on this planet. So
I was just telling my homie, I sent him some stuff on Instagram. I was like, bro, I gotta go to Red Rocks. Like,
yeah,
that's a dream of mine to fucking perform at Red Rocks and to do my own shit there someday and have my own experiences because it's just so beautiful. Um,
absolutely.
but I guess I have another question that's kind of interesting. So, in regards to music, um, and just consciousness, because I always love going into just consciousness and frequencies
For
and
sure.
stuff, because it's much like the radio, right? Like your thoughts are the radio of your mind, and as you tune your emotions in this creative space of emotion within yourself, you're allowed different thoughts that are in resonance with these frequencies, right? um, and so if you were to look at something like Colorado, uh, and then look at say like New York and the kind of music that comes out of there, the kind of thoughts that emanate in that space. Did you find a different progression within your artwork or your drive or what you were speaking on and how you were speaking on it? Did it change from where it started within you, or did it have almost seemingly, were they two different journeys? You know, because I've had things in my life where it's like I didn't realize everything gets used until looking in retrospect. And I'm like, oh shit, I took something from that and from that and from that. And I thought it was like a failed experiment, right? But God was just like, no, I'm about to blend this in your fucking consciousness all through your spirit, and just one day here it came.
I think that's a good way of looking at it. Like it feels like it was like a chapter in the book, kind of. I was going somewhere with that.
That's okay.
I lost the train, but yeah.
We like to just navigate whatever the fuck. Also, Zach, has anything popped into your brain?
A lot of different things have popped in my brain.
All right, hit it.
Well, one, I'll take it back directly to your music. Because when I listen to music, because I went to film school and I'm a very visual person, when I listen to a song, in my head plays a movie and what that song would work for, right? And the beats that you've picked for your songs have given me, like, literally what I seen was like New York, like kids running around, or like a basketball montage of some kind, people having a good time, like just vibing, right? And it felt like a 90s like cinematic piece that would work perfectly. And so like that was something I was like, whoa, this is crazy. That's what made me enjoy the beats more. I was like, I can easily see a movie for this song.
Yeah.
And then jumping forward to your to the whole ecosystem kind of thing, I wanted to challenge an idea of yours a little bit.
Let's get into it.
So I do think that humans can help to slow the process that's going on on the world, right? But there is a history of the world heating and cooling, going through this cycle. And so I almost think that it's inevitable that it's going to happen regardless of our part to play in it. I think that maybe humans are speeding it up potentially through all the carbon emissions and things like that, and causing these issues. So I was gonna mention it, but then you guys jumped to a different subject, so I wanted to get your opinion on that.
Okay. Well, first, thank you for the kind words on the music, and yeah, that is kind of like the vibe I was trying to hit. I don't know if you've seen like the movie Kids, but like, yeah, that's kind of what your description made me think of. But yeah, as far as like the pushback, or like the second thing you said, the planet does definitely go through like the heating and cooling cycles, like the ice age and all that. But also, maybe it is inevitable. Like I don't have all the answers. But I know that, if we did stop like drilling and like treating the planet like a dumpster, it would help our chances.
It would at least slow it down.
Yeah, slow it down, or I don't know. But I think we got to learn to live in heart. Like, and I'm not the first one to say this, but like, we like to view ourselves as separate from the rest of nature, but like we are just like from the air we breathe, every meal we eat, like unless you're eating something made in a lab, but like, it's all just so connected to nature. Like, I don't know, we just got to learn to live with it and not against it, basically.
So, on top of that, what are your thoughts about becoming an interstellar species? Because we would literally have to terraform if we wanted to move to Mars, right? We would have to create an ecosystem there, which means we would have to go almost against entirely what we're doing on Earth by reversing a destroyed planet and giving it something that can sustain life when we're taking away what can sustain life on Earth.
That's a cool thought.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm all for like science and space exploration and all that. I think I think going to Mars, like, I think Mars would be a temporary thing for us. Like, I don't know if we could really like start fresh on Mars and sustain that. Like, maybe our technology could get to that point, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we were given this planet, and like we should take better care of it in simple terms. But like if we truly are on the crash course to destruction, then shit, maybe we do got to make Mars work, you know?
Yeah, like what the fuck is with people thinking there's a doper planet than fucking Earth, bro?
Well,
I really
can
don't get it. Hold on, hold the
okay.
fucking phone,
All
okay?
right. Well, I was
You know
gonna.
how fucking far to the lengths of through this fucking galaxy you gotta send fucking chimps and monkeys and hope they fucking can make it back, and people just fucking, rather than just fucking grow a garden, you fucking lazy bitch. Like, what the fuck are we talking about? Okay,
Well,
I just got to get into this, and I'm a little bit on a soapbox right now because I've been thinking about it, and I'm like, yo, how many fucking times do you got to shake just a 25-piece puzzle before that motherfucker comes out completely made perfectly? Look at how fucking symbiotic this is. This is by design, and so like to kind of round it back to what you were talking about inevitability. Of Earth kind of going through this shit. When I'm looking at it, I'm like, yo, maybe there's a better way that we can do this where we don't have to clean up so much bullshit coming behind it. And that's where, like, the whole ecocide thing is a perfect phrase and terminology for this shit. And then the other side of it is like, okay, if this is somewhat inevitable, because I look at it like, if we look at nature, right? And we look at humans, the one thing that, although we may be a little bit inverse of each other in our ways of living, in how we, human beings inhale oxygen and expel carbon dioxide. Trees do the opposite of that shit, right?
mm-hmm.
Which is why we feel so imbalanced when we're in nature. But I digress. What I was going to say is, like, when we're looking at life on Earth and the progression of it and the human body being reflective of God and all of this being like nature and there being so many different pieces, it's more than just cause and effect. There's like a spiritual nature and essence behind consciousness,
Yeah.
And this may seem like a little bit of a ramble, but the problem is the solution. The problem is the gateway to the solution. And so maybe this problem that we're experiencing is really Earth's solution to something that we can't fucking fix quick enough, right? And so the Earth is just changing so that it can change again. And so that's kind of like the merging of all these concepts. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay. So the way that a lot of people see sending humans to live on other planets isn't the fact that another planet's cooler than Earth. It's the fact of extending human consciousness, right? So extending human consciousness within space. So if Earth was to just die and all humans were on Earth, humanity ends. It ceases to exist. But if you have humans living on Mars, Pluto, Neptune, any other planet, then imagine what humans could do with another million years, 100 million years. How, Like, take what we've done in the amount of time that we've existed, and then compound that on not just different planets with other materials and other resources, but then, extend
I
that
hear
through
you, but
100 million years.
the real problem with what you're saying is when you're talking about consciousness and the death of the human race, we don't know how the fuck humanity came to be. Because I can tell you, I wasn't no fucking tadpole.
Well,
Okay,
no one's
this
saying
shit
that. But you also
is
weren't
by
born out of
design,
nothing.
bro. But what I'm saying is like, if you're looking like space and time, I think is somewhat of a man-made construct. And I
Probably,
know
yeah.
it sounds crazy, but I think it's a man-made construct. And we can contextualize things. But I think if we were to live without that and we were just observing nature, and I can see that Eco's getting fucking into it because you know what I mean? This is a trippy fucking thought to try and navigate.
We're into it.
Don't worry, just chime in where you want. If you need to talk over me, just say, "Hey, motherfucker."
Keep going for now.
But in terms of like space and time, it's like if that shit didn't exist, right? What we really just have is experience, and we are emanations and light-based beings out of like you can go to just whether it's the Bible and in the beginning it's like God saying let there be light. You can go to science and think about the Great Bang, the Big Bang, right? It's like out of nothingness there was this thing, and from that, in this void of darkness, came light, and out of light came all things. But what the fuck caused that? It's clearly conscious, right? And so, like, that's why I'm saying is God, and we don't understand how the fuck humans are really made. We're just made. So we could make a human, but can we make a fucking soul?
We've had this
I don't know.
conversation on the podcast before. This whole
I
where
know.
does the soul come from?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
But just
somewhere
because we
out
don't
of
understand that doesn't mean we can't extend human life, right?
I know.
Making it possible for humans to exist longer.
And like to the whole extending the life thing, like I think we can both like continue the whole like space exploration path as well as try to fix the shit we've done here. It doesn't, they're not mutually exclusive, but anyway.
I like.
Yeah, because then we would just be a parasite to every planet we went to, and that's not a good look.
Like also, I don't know if we have like the means, like realistically, if shit did hit the fan on Earth and we had to go to Mars, right? Like how many people could realistically get to Mars? Like,
as of right now, 0.
Not that many.
Yeah, and it would take a while.
But yeah, I'm down to keep the consciousness talk going too. I just had to get that off.
Yeah, no worries.
It's just like, I don't know. It seems like when we're looking at, say, like, I was bringing up quantum theory, which I know very little of. I will admit that. But when you're looking at which cell is going to outlive the other cell, you have no way of determining it, right? And so when you're looking to, say, expand the life of something, right? You can do something to add age to the physical apparatus, but when that being is like meant to go, when it's completed its course, it's like it's done, son. Like I really don't know how to explain it other than that,
but that doesn't mean that being, that cell, isn't still gonna fight to survive. Well, you can't take the instinct to survive out of something.
But what if death isn't death, it's a birth into another life?
We're still going to try to not die. It doesn't matter. Our physical bodies, the brain that's controlling everything, doesn't want to die. So it's going to stay alive.
That's an interesting
try,
It's a survival instinct that's literally built into us. Now, if you can accept death and you're like, okay, well, then that's just something that's going to happen, and you're not afraid of it. And when your time does come, you accept it with open arms, and you go. That's cool. But most things don't want to die.
Hold on, but what is the essence of that act reflecting?
What do you mean? Which act?
Preserving the soul, I guess, is what you're getting at.
No, it's like being godlike, being one with God. When people like describe like, okay,
Well,
I
hold on. The
always
act
wanted
of
to
what? What was like the act of what?
well, I'm getting into it. I always wanted to be in the military and like in the special forces, and so I've listened to a lot of podcasts from veterans and veterans talking about experiences with other human beings, you know, other men, other women, and people in these very dire circumstances of life and death that knew what was coming for them but chose to face it and to go towards it. And it's like the way that they describe that moment with those people making that decision, it's like they really are like God embodied in a person. And it's like they glow in that way, you know? And you can look at people that were living to die by things, you know, like and were willing to die for certain causes in order to stand up, you know? And it's so interesting to look at life in that way. And I just think a lot of people don't want to. My grandpa Frank said it this way. He said, "Death smiles at all of us, and all we can do is smile back." And I was like, "That's the most gangster shit I've ever heard."
Well, see, that wraps it back around to the inevitability part, right? Maybe Earth's death is inevitable, and part of us wanting to fix it is us trying to survive. But no matter what, you're going to want to survive. You can still greet death with a smile, but that brain, your brain, is going to like. There's things that you do that are that are subconscious that you don't control, and sometimes it's just like, yo, fucking get your shit together. Like the brain releases the fight or flight hormones and the instincts and shit, right? That all comes down to survival. The
I guess I
brain
just
wants to survive.
fundamentally disagree because I think that Earth is like an interesting plane of it and realm of experience. You
I
know,
think it's a brain.
that well, yeah, it's conscious. It's a
Yeah.
conscious realm.
We are
But
cells to it with our own brains.
I don't know. I think that there is always the option to end this experience. You know,
Well, yeah.
but I think you don't truly end your experience. You're just born into another experience.
And I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I think it's just the idea of the cell not wanting to die. It's like death is definitely a part of life, and you cannot avoid it. Death is inevitable. That is literally the only destiny that everybody shares.
And
Or is
taxes.
death destined to live, being destined to live again?
And maybe that's part of it. But we have no actual like knowing of that until we get to that other side, until we do die. But the brain doesn't want to die. Like
Go for
even
it,
when you
brother.
do die, the brain like softens the blow for you by releasing DMT and having you trip balls right as you die. It eases you into death because it doesn't want to. It's like, yo, let's just make this shit a little soft for us. Not so jarring. Yeah, I have to take a wicked leak, so I'm gonna be right back.
Go for it. I'm just looking for something that I found was interesting in here if I can find it. I'm just kind of perusing through a book real quick. But did anything pop into your mind off of that?
Yeah, I got a lot on the mind right now.
All right, hit it.
Just not sure where we're taking it. But Yeah, it also made me think of like near death experiences too. Just like hearing people's accounts of like those final moments. But I think, like you were saying with the whole like smiling at death, I think that's a great like approach. Like you got to operate without fear in this life because like yeah, while death is inevitable, like I don't know, you just got to seize the life that you do have too. I don't know. um, yeah.
Yeah, there's so many different ways of explaining it too, which
Yeah.
is really freaking cool. Um,
Yeah, I'm always down to get on philosophical tip too. So no.
yeah, I've been reading a lot about just different stuff lately. In particular, uh, like synchronicity within the universe, right? And it's exploring the consciousness in terms of the physical and what we would describe as like the non-physical, metaphysical, whatever, right? And how the physical universe, although it appears to function on cause and effect, right? There's a whole underlying intentional universe that is a spiritually energetic universe, you know? And there is a marrying and a mirroring of the two that is unique to each one of us within this same one world that we share, right? And so, one of the things about a human experience that a lot of people aren't recognizing, although they're coming to recognize, and as we become more intellectual, I guess, um, inversely, just like a pendulum swinging one way and back the other, like if we think about the intellectual and the mental realm, right, of thought being a non-physical thing, right? That's a frequency that's transmitted through our brain and creates electrical stirring that then flows in accordance with our breath, our chi, our life energy drawn into us through our physical apparatus and flowed throughout our circuitry of our body, right? And on this side of the pendulum, we have the body, and in between these two polar opposites, I guess you could say, of the physical and the non physical, we have the chakra system, right? And so rather than looking at it left to right, we look at it top to bottom,
Hmm.
okay? And so we're beginning to, um, although we're taking things very intellectually over here as a non physical thing and trying to compartmentalize everything, like, yes, you can experience something traumatic or hard to survive and become strong willed and through your mind create a framework of understanding with powerful thoughts to get you through it. But it's a compartmentalizing that creates an atrophy within the physical experience through your spirit not being able to live out those experiences and the feelings that are caused by those thoughts of that experience, right? Through your system in the way that it's supposed to. Because each chakra houses a different realm and aspect of your being and the consciousness that is you. You know, you're more than just thoughts, you know? And so you can have an experience of, say, physicality without there being any heart connection to it or any mental connection to it, just pure physicality, right? And fuck kind of like animals. Or you can have it where it's kind of intellectual and sexual, but not necessarily have that heart connection with someone. Oftentimes, this is like, yeah, you had good sex and there was foreplay there, right? So it was like this interesting, fun game, and it involved both of those things, but it might not have had that third component. And these experiences aren't necessarily wrong, but if you were to look back at them and say, maybe sex is not necessarily the greatest example because hopefully it involves your willingness to participate, right? But still, there's other aspects of your being you might not know how to navigate within that. You might not know how to navigate your instinctual nature within that, you know? So, although you're going through this and you've created this great fantasy, in the moment, you might not be able to actually navigate when to shift and to do one thing versus the other in a way that feels natural. Although the body is just receiving sensation from it and the mind is receiving sensation, it's still not a full experience until it's allowed throughout all aspects that are respective to it.
So I guess like being fully in tune, or as fully in tune as you can be with like that spiritual and the physical side, but also, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so
I'm trying to follow here. Yeah.
a lot of people are taking this, I guess, this string of experience, and you have this encounter somewhere along this string, but it becomes more like a ball of yarn that's all entangled, and it's housed in one spot, although it's meant to go all the way through the system, right? And so it reaches this knot. And so a lot of people have this knot and are just only focusing on the intellectual aspect of something. And they're not able to actually spiritually progress beyond this learning experience and continually draw to them other situations that bring about this emotion until they're able to house it properly and accept and live the experience fully. And you can't do that compartmentalizing anything. And so your creative ability becomes stifled. You just regurgitate the same thing, the essence of it. And so I think when we look at it in terms of us as creators, and what does this all mean? Because it's this mind-boggling fun theory and concept to navigate, right? But where the rubber meets the road is when your mind and your body are able to meet and have this experience that is heartfelt and true and organic and natural. And it's okay if it's peaceful or if it's not so peaceful at times, in order for you to feel these things, to progress that thought and the creation that comes from it. Because thought and emotion are like married. They're like Siamese twins.
Yeah, but for some or a lot of people, yeah, that marriage is a rocky marriage. So yeah, I think that's part of the life experience, just learning how to tap into your emotions. And honestly, a lot of that I think comes from just spending time reflecting inward. And whether that means for you like smoking some weed or just like be meditating or whatever the case is, like I don't know, just tapping into that the otherworldly or all the otherworldly, but also your emotional and all the chakras and like all of these things. I think a lot of that comes from soul search. Like a lot of people think it'll just come to them naturally, and for some people it may, and sometimes it may, but a lot of that you have to actively like look within and like really confront some of like you might have to deal with some past trauma, you might have to deal with some thoughts that are you don't want to deal with, but I think it's important to deal with them in the long term for your character development, if you will.
Yeah. And I think the word trauma, for the record, gets severely overused.
That's true. Yeah.
I think there's levels to severity. And in some ways, I don't like generalizing things, although I do it so fucking often in order to
I think it's human nature to a degree,
well, I might as well call myself out while I'm here, But I think we're both things. We're fragile and resilient, right? And like sometimes in order to be resilient enough to get through an experience, we're really showing our fragility in not being willing to experience something for what it is, for what it truly is, for what it truly brings. And I think this universe has an aspect of it where it's reflective of our inward universe. So there really is no avoidance, there's only inclusion. And that's why if you go to like the law of attraction, like attracts like, you know, you receive the harmonious encounter of whatever energy you emanate, you know? And so if you're a happy person, you find more things that validate and reflect to you that chosen state of happiness. And if you're less than happy and you think that this is a scary place, you draw to yourself more things that will affirm that this is a scary place. And that's your creative power. And until you're able to look at those scary things and understand that they're a choice that can be made and you don't have to make that choice, and it's not something imposing itself upon you as much as you play a role in drawing that to you, and you're willing to accept it, not in a victim blaming way, because some people grow up in households and situations where there's predatory negative people and you're in a vulnerable state, and you grow up in a place where you aren't made to it's not conducive to feeling safe. And us as children, uh, being reflective beings, right, we also um, learn to reflect and to not rock the boat, so to speak, so we can harmonize with um, what is around us before we know if it's good or bad energy. You know, like we may instinctively know, but sometimes we don't know how to stand up for ourselves, and it like creates a spiritual, emotional, or physical like atrophy, um, and sometimes a personality. And one of the things I actually heard today that was really interesting, I was talking with a lady at my physical therapy. Um, so shout out to Kristen with a K. She was a preschool teacher, right? And she said, I think 3-year-olds are like teenagers. And I was like, word? She was like, yeah, it's a stage of your life where you want independence, you know, and if you don't get it, you throw this temper tantrum. And we have to be taught kind of how to be in order to get what we want, rather than catered to just because we throw a fit doesn't mean you'll necessarily get it. And I think as adults, you know, you add some years to that. You look at us as teenagers, you look at us as um, not being taught infinite in the way that we should. You know, we're not taught the value of our own thought, you know, because if you knew how valuable you were, who's going to buy into this rat race?
Mm.
Right? If and we're taught there's only so many pieces of the pie and to be comparative. But really, fuck all that. We don't really understand the difference of what made that person get that thing versus this person getting this thing because we can't feel for them. We've never navigated all their thoughts. So we can look on the outside at what they do, but we can't ever truly see their intention or their happiness.
Yeah, intent and nuance is a huge part of life. I think people forget. And I think that's a big problem with what social media is because people put all of their thoughts and they say things, or even just written word in general, like maybe a text or something with limited characters where it's like you're saying something, but you can't put your intent and emotion behind it without putting 40,000 extra words into it that you can't fit into like 140 characters on Twitter or something, right? And so that causes a lot of
There aren't words.
problems. What?
Yeah. There
Yeah,
aren't words
social.
to become emotions.
Yeah. So like that's a big problem is like people say these things on Twitter or on Instagram and things like that, and it's completely void of any emotion because you can't read that. And so that's, I feel like we have to get back to doing more face-to-face interaction. And I've said this to some of my younger friends before. I'm like, because some of them have never been in a situation where they've potentially could get hit for the things that they've said. And so I'm like, dude, you lack the perspective of potentially being punched in the face for saying something stupid.
Yeah.
Because there's very little face to face now.
Mm.
Like I've literally been hit for saying stupid shit. So it's like, dude.
Yeah, like social media definitely blurs, or you can't really convey the intent. And yeah, I think like a lot of these arguments people get into and like stupid disputes online can like if these people just talked in person or maybe even had to, scuff it out first in person to get to that point of understanding. I don't know. I think it would be better in the long run for everybody involved. And yeah, like again, social media it should just be a tool, but a lot of times we're the ones getting used, like that whole Social Dilemma documentary gets into. But
It's a fantastic documentary, by the way.
Yeah, I think a lot of anybody that uses social media should watch it, honestly. So
it's on Netflix, The Social Dilemma.
I think if we understand frequency, we don't have to worry about any of that, and we stop we stop putting our nose and our thoughts where it doesn't belong, or where we, like, if you truly begin to base things on feeling and the merits of the principles that you're navigating through their essence,
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry. And that's, I guess, what I'm trying to say is like, well, I think it might have been Albert Einstein that said this, but is this world a scary place, or is this world a beautiful place or not? That's the real question to answer. And if you begin to just look at life as a beautiful experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just say, like, thank you, having an attitude of thankfulness, because you don't need to understand, like, just because this thing didn't come to you in this exact moment doesn't mean it hasn't already, you haven't already become it. Like, if you can feel the essence of it resonate with inside of yourself, and you act and do the things that are required of you to receive this thing, right? If you want to be a great musician, right? You're a great musician long before you ever picked up that guitar.
Yeah.
Long before you spit your first rhyme. You were in the moment that you decided, I'd like to be that. And as you began taking those steps, whether they were big steps or small steps, sometimes they're steps of research, sometimes they're steps of what you would like to do and what you wouldn't like to do. So you can learn how to navigate who you want to be in this space. You can become thankful for the whole journey, and you erase the their aspect, because everything is infinite. It's just a choice. Would I like this more, or would I like that more? And when you look at it as more or more, rather than more or less, right? Would I like this more or that more? Well, things become a much more positive feeling atmosphere within yourself as you navigate these realms of thought. Because you're training your brain to seek for appreciating value.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you focus on anything, it's a form of your praise. and everything flourishes in praise. So if you focus on things that are the negative aspects of something and you praise them, it will get worse. It will become more apparent. You will see more of it. So when you take this back to like navigating social media and stuff, I'm not so sure that I even have come to understand the way we interact with electronic things based on in comparison to like natural things, say a Kindle versus a fucking regular book.
Mm-hmm.
All I know is that when I pick up a regular book, it feels way better to me. The reading experience is better to me. There's something about these pages that hold a frequency that's different than that of an electronic object.
You know what I like about reading? It's your progress is physical. Right?
Yes.
So each time you turn the page, you're like, okay, I'm making progress. I'm moving through this shit. And then you look at your bookmark and it goes from a quarter of the way to 3/4 of the way. And now you're done. Now you're like, whoa, what book am I going to read next? Meditations by Marcus Aurelius? Bet.
Dude, did you actually read that book? Because that book was fucking awesome.
It's my next book. After the
Dude,
one
it's
I'm reading.
so
right now.
fucking good.
I'm
You
reading,
read that?
right
Havner?
now. Go ahead.
No, but I'm gonna write it down right now.
It's
Oh, yeah.
I've heard too many good things about it, and I've seen too many good quotes out of it, not for me not to have checked it out.
Yo, he explains a lot about the law of attraction in there. So
And he also
fucking
talks a
read,
lot about
ask and it is given. Read, ask and it is given. If there's one fucking book to read that fucking book. It will change your life.
He also
By
talks about
Abraham Hicks.
forgiveness. Marcus Aurelius does, because he forgives the person that tried to have him assassinated.
Yeah. Dude, that book is incredible. Like, I think like the second chapter of that book was something he wrote while he was like mid fucking war campaign, like on the banks of some like river in Africa or something, if I remember correctly. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't get all the way through that book. It was really deep for me, and kind of hard to read because I was shit. I think I was 18 or 19 when I first started working at the library. And so as I was working in this library, I would go through and I would just open books because I was always shelving books. I was like, I didn't talk to people. It was a great job, especially for experiencing a grieving process, to be able to just keep to yourself almost like a monk. And like, when you talk about the pages of like books having an energy, going to like different sections of that library, I would open things from poetry to like any kind of book. When I would be reshelving books throughout the day, I'd just open and just read. Sometimes I wouldn't read the whole book. Other times I would, I'd take it home. But I was just satisfied with this thought journey, kind of going through there. And that was one of the books I picked up. And I was like, yo, this is so fucking bananas, this book.
The other crazy part about this book is he was writing it for himself. He wasn't writing a book to publish a book. He was writing a journal. And so all of these things that he says, like how philosophical it is and how, kind of next level in thought, is all just him thinking to himself, things that he wants himself to know or other leaders to know and things like that. So it's kind of an interesting book, but I'm excited to read it. Super excited. I'm reading
I need to double back on it.
I'm reading the Book of the Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi right now, which is really interesting.
I need to read that too, because that's what Alex, my one of my older brothers, he always tells me about that.
I was told.
I think you were talking about that one on that Face Melting episode, right, Zach?
Oh yeah.
The Five Rings. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That sounds like another cool
one. From a friend that has read it several times, you're supposed to read it and then also go into like practice mode on the different things that are in it, because it's not like it's not like The Art of War where it kind of explains everything and breaks it down. It
More like the Four Agreements, kind of.
Yeah, so it gives you the outline of strategy, and then you have to go into your own research about it. And then you're also like the Book of the Five Rings is meant to be read multiple times because it's super short. It's like maybe close to 200 pages, if that. So it's like
Can I?
what?
Oh, sorry. Go
ahead.
on.
No, I was pretty much done.
I was gonna say I just want to read you this poem that was so freaking incredible to me.
Read it.
As children bring their broken toys with tears for us to mend, I brought my broken dreams to God because He was my friend. But instead of leaving Him in peace to work alone, I hung around and tried to help with ways that were my own. At last I snatched them back and cried, "How can you be so slow?" "My child," He said, "what could I do? You never let them go." Broken Dreams by Loretta Burns. Is that not like, yo, bananas level beautiful? I straight up cried when I read that.
Yeah, it's kind of
Kind of
like
reminds
that.
me of like a. Oh,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was saying it reminds me of like a Dream Deferred, Langston Hughes, but yeah.
I can't say that I've read that. You should read it, bro.
It's a quick. What were you gonna say though, Zach? In the meantime.
It the way what I thought about it was that it's basically like letting go of your negative thoughts, kind of. It's like what you were explaining earlier, whereas like, do I like this more? Do I like that more? That's almost what it feels like. It's like
It's an
letting go of
interesting
those.
take on acceptance.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot, and this goes back. I think I mentioned this on another podcast, but I'm not sure, so I'll bring it up again. The biblical concept of good success. You know, like, sure, you could succeed in, you know, being a rapper, but what if, say, you weren't meant to be a rapper? Like, what if you were meant to be a doctor, right? And you were supposed, like, God designed you to do this, but you did that, right? Like, what if your intention in your spirit walk through life? Because I don't like to think of it as like God and me are inseparable because we are an extension of God, right? And so this walk that we choose is partially chosen, you know, by us and by God. There's an agreement, you know, there's a relationship. And that's why there's like the ego side of yourself, right? And then there's also the spirit, like the purely aligned with God section of yourself, you know? And maybe one does exist for the other, but one serves less of a divine purpose in your actual behavioral patterns, right? When you're living in the ego. So, but it's still a part of God's plan for you that is a device that is used to show you, um, to give you the gift of progression, right? An evolution of your beingness and consciousness, right? To have these habits that are a culmination of all your lives and all your consciousness. And so they're almost like subconscious. They're just a part of you, the way that you do things. You know, it's almost like, have you ever learned something and it wasn't like you learned it, you just knew it? I guess
Like,
like
yeah, you like memorized it, but you really didn't get the internalize the lesson, I guess.
no, I mean, like, say you ask me something about, like, I have a friend, okay? My friend was like, yeah, I never really picked up a book and learned Chinese medicine. I just understood the theory and the concepts, and so people could ask me something, and then I went and I researched this, and it turns out everything that I was saying, it's like I knew it and I never had to open a book.
Okay.
I just opened a book and the book reaffirmed my theories that I already had.
Gotcha.
Right?
It's like picking up a hammer for the first time and just being able to know how to swing it properly.
Mm-hmm.
In a very simple way. Like that's a very
That's
dumbed down
exactly.
version.
Yeah, and like some people might look at that in terms, and this is something I haven't delved into that I'm curious about because I can't say I know enough about it. But epigenetics, right? And
What
the
is
way
that?
that
Yeah, I don't know.
epigenetics, it's basically like, say your family generations ago, they discovered it in DNA, right? That there's certain things in your genetic makeup that turn on or off different proclivities, and they figured it out when they were looking at, I believe, allergies. And it's been forever since I saw this. I was actually in school. I was probably in like 7th grade or something when I saw this. But there was a family, I believe, like a Slavic family in a part of like Russia or Eastern Europe. And they lived around a certain kind of wheat. And they were trying to study years and years and years and years later why these people in this region of the world were not allergic to this thing that was harming everyone else, right? And so they traced the evolution of this wheat back to a certain place and region, right? And they looked at the DNA from these people compared to the DNA from these other people. And they saw that encoded into the DNA was something that was on a neurological and like developmental level, a gene switch, I guess, a light switch that was turned on in them or turned off and that wasn't turned off. You know what I mean? You see what I'm saying? There's something they had that other people didn't have. They were like, why the fuck is this, right? So say like a hammer, right? In like Norse or like Viking culture, they would call this, I believe, your Othala, right? Which is like your ancestral DNA, you know? Like you guys have been carpenters for fucking ever.
Yeah.
And so maybe it can be explained in that way. And you just living all these past lives, how do you know that you chose that your parents as this gateway to you just made the perfect makeup for it? I don't know. I haven't gotten into that. I think there's many ways to explain the same thing, and science is kind of trailing behind what actually is in terms of spirit. And there's some things that I don't think science can explain because the deeper you go into it, it's an endless pool of possibilities to navigate. And so you have to come back to the accepting nature of knowingness. And that's why it's like, okay, why are we so afraid and offended by the beauty that is the concept of God and the reality of God, and that you are loved and that you are here set up to win as a reflection of God. God made you the God of your universe and put you in this world of creation to reflect the universe that is inside of you through you to the world. How is that not a beautiful privilege and honor?
There is a certain group of believers. I forget the name of it, but I've heard this like super long speech before. But these people believe that God created everything and just wants us to appreciate it for its beauty. And I think a lot of people, rather than believing that and seeing God in a way that that is just someone who wants you to appreciate what he made, they see it as the Christian what Christianity is, which is something that seems to be very fucked with in a lot of ways. Because that's one of the reasons I can't get behind it. There's so many things that seem to contradict itself too much for me to want to be like, okay, I'm a Christian. But do I accept the idea that there could be a God and that we might all be wrong about what it is or how it came to be around or what its intentions are? Sure. I am 100% down to appreciate the beauty of the mountains, the rivers, the trees, the smell of flowers, and appreciate it for its, like what you say, how connected it is, how good it makes me feel to be in nature. I can appreciate all that, but a lot of people forget, like they tie the Christianity part to God, right? So like a long time ago, when you and I would talk about God and religion, the second you started saying God, I would just disconnect from the conversation because I couldn't get behind the idea of the Christian God because it's fucked with. It doesn't seem right. It seems like a dictatorship to me, right? But when we talk about God in a way of someone who just wants you to appreciate the things that he creates, I can get with that because I'm a creator who wants you to appreciate the things that I create.
I think there's a lot of navigating within your, like, there's a lot that you want to understand out of coming to in your own relationship to God, you know, and the concept of what God is, how God is, who God is to you, you know? And I think in terms of Christianity, I think you're right. There are good and not so good teachers, better and worse teachers, I guess you can say. And just like everything, there's going to be some imposters or people that do wrong in the name of something that is right. But I think if you look at like Christianity and Jesus Christ as the teacher of Christianity, not the doctrine of the Bible. The Bible is just many explanations that are contradictory because not everything is right for everyone. And everyone's experience of God is different, although God is constant. You know, God is pure love and all knowing. You know, and I think that's why I always say on here, I talk about God a lot. And it isn't about religion, it's about God. However, Jesus Christ is a gateway to God, is God who had come in the flesh. And we are all much the same, but to a lesser extent of being able to live. Not everyone lived with the same integral purity. You know what I mean? Because it's a very hard thing to focus and to withstand and to sustain. And Jesus Christ is a special soul and a teacher and a guide, you know, to God. And I think there's many things and many religions because there are many different people who will believe and have and require and want a different walk through life. But God himself, God as an entity is not changing. Does that make sense? And so it's
A
like,
little bit.
you don't need the Bible to see God. You could see God in a flower. Some people come to understand God in many different ways. But like, so Zen is a term for meditation, right? But in meditation, they talk about enlightenment, right? So when you do things in a Zen way and you actually do meditate and look within yourself and you acknowledge and recognize God not only outside of yourself, but you recognize God within yourself. That is a moment of enlightenment. That's what I describe as the Holy Spirit, right? It is the divine spirit of pure love of God. You are experiencing God moving through your apparatus and being one with that energy. You are not only in resonance as a fragment, it's outside and inside simultaneously. That is a moment of enlightenment. But to live enlightened, to live in that state, is Christ-like. And that's what it means to be a Christian. And so in the Bible, there are many things, but if you look at how Jesus handled one person versus another person, he'll tell one person to do this and then go tell this other person who he performed the same miracle on to do it in a totally different way. Because not everybody's the same. The revelatory light of God is the same. The energy is the same, but the lessons and the pathway to them and the way that it becomes meaningful to you is different, because your spirit is at a different point in its path, although it may be ailed by the same ailment. It may be, you may be hurt in the same way as another person, but for a different reason. You may be in a different spiritual path, and I think there's a lot of merit to that people may want to believe, but they come at faith from a place of doubt, and therefore they can't resonate with the frequency because they're too different. You have to come willing and wanting to believe, and you'll find. Because God, like my mom when I was little, I've told you this story many times, but when she asked me, what is the color of God? And I went and I searched my crayon box and everything. I go to school, I come back, and she was just making dinner, and I had these crayons prepared, and I started pulling them out, rapid firing these questions at her. She let me guess a little bit, and then she turned around. She knelt down and kind of just grabbed me by my shoulders and was just like, God is the color of water because he reflects to you that which you see in him. And turned back and went to the stove. And so if you take that and you look at what you seek, you'll find. And so once you recognize that you want to see God, you recognize God inside of yourself. Now, I can't tell you what interaction you'll have because it'll be unique to you. Although there is, in the river of consciousness that is God and that frequency, there are people that can tap into that and see these things and can recognize it. There's divine knowledge, and Jesus is teaching us how to live in an alignment that we have divine creative power and knowledge that supersedes our physical abilities to understand, using just our 5 senses as a gauge. And so you can look to science and look to all these other things. And I'm not going to say that you won't find God there, because God is in all things, but your ability to see it hinges upon your willingness to acknowledge that within yourself and what you're seeking. And that's why some people can do one thing and find fulfillment, and other people can do that very same thing and be unfulfilled. It boggles our mind. But this is a very individualistic journey, and it's beautiful and it's catered to you. And that's how loved you are. And that's how powerful and meaningful you are. And what you do is everything. Everything to you and your path and your development. You know, so if you want to be a great musician, start doing the things that make you a great musician. Write, study, look at other people's things, listen to music, you know, observe culture, listen to poetry, research rhyme schemes, you know, and in time, that seed will grow to fruition, you know, because an apple seed is an apple, but you can't eat it when it's an apple seed.
Could. It probably wouldn't be too tasty, though.
Yeah, but it contains the very essence, and that essence will be brought to maturity.
Yeah.
If nurtured. And
Gotta
so,
water it.
yep, as you nurture whatever it is inside of yourself that you're seeking, inherently, there's no way that you can't be, that you will not become it. You will. How, when, why, where, I don't know. But that's not for me to know. You know, I mean, I can tap into it potentially, but do I want to? Do I care to? Does that add to my experience? In the sense of, it can seem almost indifferent, you know? But when you look at things as choice, you know, you're rather than giving people sympathy, you're empowering them by saying, no, that's a choice and they can make that too. And in acknowledging that free will, you're then able to, like, almost, you start looking at your own reality different, and you just become appreciative of the act of doing it, of conveying it, not for the grandeur of being the one telling the story, but for what it may mean to someone else. You know? And it's like, that's cool. It's an honor to be the conduit for this.
Yeah.
But I don't need the accolades, but that's what brings the accolades, and I would enjoy the accolades, so I will not shy away from them. You know? I'm willing to look at them and go, oh, that'd be nice. I'd like to experience that too. But the emotional need for it doesn't have to be there. And when you can dissolve the emotional attachment to these things, these outcomes, and these things that your efforts hinge upon, you know, you become able to live enlightened. You're complete. You are in oneness. It's not God is separate from you. You and God are one. You are complete. When you do things in a Zen way, it's meditative because it brings you closer to you're observing the oneness of something. There may be many steps to, say, learning how to shoot a gun, right? But you can break that into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller steps. And that's very Zen. And you can do them slow, and then you can learn to appreciate the nature of the many layers of it. You know?
Yeah.
Just like if you were to eat, just eat. No music, no nothing, no thought. Just eat. And see the appreciation of the many layers, the textures, the flavors, and the more that it ruminates, the way that it changes. There's essence to the food that exists on different levels. If you're willing to appreciate each one individually, you get a more full experience.
The underlying message, just appreciate everything, guys. Appreciation will lead to happiness.
Yeah.
Eco, you got anything else to add before we wrap this sucker up? I don't want it to get stale on us.
No, I mean, yeah, you've been spitting bars about God and the whole enlightenment process, and I was just enjoying it. So, yeah, nothing in particular. I mean, yeah.
All right.
Boom.
Well, you know, people can check out your stuff on YouTube and on Spotify, correct?
Yeah, it's all on all those streaming platforms. There's going to be T-shirts made soon.
Fuck yeah.
Links in the bio
Link is in that bio.
or description.
And yeah, thanks again for having me on the podcast. It's great to meet you, Zach. And yeah,
you
Kemp,
too,
it's
bro.
always a pleasure.
Yes, an honor and a pleasure, my friend. Everybody, until next week, we're signing out. Thank you, Hoodlums. Stay happy. Peace.
Peace.